The, uh, the museums that we brought together today, we're so excited to share with you how we interpret the history of our community. Of course, being the Aiken County Historical Museum, we're kind of over everybody. I like to say that we're a hub, and that we want to be the hub that sends you out to the spokes of the county so you can learn more about the different museums and historical sites that we have. Just because we're in the city of Aiken doesn't mean we only represent the city, we represent the county as well. So as Anna already told you, this is all of us, but if you want to know how to spell our names, there you go. And no, I'm not a Virgo, I'm a Capricorn. Sorry, I know. Everybody always asks me like, hey, what's your sign? I'm like, nope, nope, nope. So you are currently sitting in Banksia, and we are 17,500 square feet. We're just a tiny little cottage, you guys. Come on. We are 3.5 acres here on our lots. We have 5 outdoor structures, and you may be like, outdoor structures, what? All of them were moved here, and so we've got the Ergo log cabin, we've got the China Springs schoolhouse, we've got the buttery from William Gregg's plantation, we have the Transit of Venus Observatory, and we have the courthouse bell from the Aiken County Courthouse that was struck by lightning and came down in 1981. So we've got a lot of cool stuff on the grounds to see, not just our beautiful building. We were founded in 1970, so we are 55 years old today, or this month. And dang, we look good for our age, I think. But we were founded as part of the South Carolina Tricentennial, the 1670 to 1970 celebration throughout South Carolina, when Aiken County Historical Commission was created, and they decided that we needed a home for all the wonderful artifacts that we had discovered as part of that celebration. So that's how the museum came to be. Since 1982, we have been a public-private partnership with the Aiken County government. And you may say, public-private partnership, what does that mean? Well, basically it means that I'm a county employee and so are my coworkers, and the county maintains this beautiful building and its grounds. But our friends group, which you supported by coming here today with your wonderful tickets, so thank you. I hope we're worth the money. But y'all are supporting all of our exhibits, all of our events, all of our programming, all the artifact preservation. So that's how we have our public-private partnership. Is part of it is maintained by the county, part of it is maintained by the Friends of the Museum. So thank y'all for your support. We have 32 exhibits here. And that's a lot. And we could do with more as well. So we're always growing, always changing. You'll often see that we're renovating exhibits all the time, bringing in new topics, bringing in rotating exhibits. We're trying to keep it fresh. I never want somebody to say, why go to the Aiken County Museum? I've been there, done that. Bless you. Been there, done that, don't need to go back. And that is my nightmare situation, because I feel like we should always be evolving, bringing something new to our community, and showing off wonderful, exciting things. So hopefully we always keep it fresh. We also have educational programs. So if any of y'all have kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews, we do something called Family Fun Days. And, you know, they're fun, and they're for the family, and they're free, because they're sponsored by the Friends of the Museum. And we have a different theme every month. This month it is the founding of Aiken County coming up. Our birthday as a county is March 10th, 1871. And we are doing a program with the kiddos where they build puzzle pieces of the county based on the industry of what was there in the 1870s. So kind of fun. They have to solve little riddles and everything. So we try to make it, again, fun for the kiddos to come learn history. And we also have special events such as spooky tours. How many of y'all have gone on our spooky tours? Awesome. Okay. So we got some folks who need to come. But spooky tours, we turn all the lights off in the museum. See, there's the spooky part. And then we take you throughout the building, and you get to meet different historical characters from Aiken County's history. And it's all real. It's all legit. We're not making up any stories. For instance, 2 years ago, I was researching, as one does, murder on the newspaper archives, and I found the murderous bridge. And I was like, huh? So, of course, I clicked on that story, and it was the fact that Lawrence Street Bridge right here used to be much lower than it is. And if you were a railroad brakeman, your job was to ride on top of the cars and hit the brakes. Well, if you didn't remember that Lawrence Street Bridge was lower than all the others, a couple of guys lost their heads literally over that. And so it was called the Murderous Bridge for several years. So stories like that are what we bring to life, kind of the macabre, neat stories that you may not hear all the time. And then we have our online artifact exploration. We actually, if you go on our website, aikencountymuseum.org, and you click on collections, it'll actually take you to a website where you can check out all of our artifacts. We're slowly putting a lot of them on there. Of course, we've got like bajillions of artifacts after 55 years of collecting. If you think your attic is bad, you should check out ours. And so if you go on that website there, you can check out all the cool artifacts we've posted. And that leads me into the format that we're going to be doing today is we're each going to give a little intro to our museums, and then we're going to talk about 3 cool artifacts that we think tell our story. So the artifact that I chose first is a Native American pottery bowl, and it's actually on display in the county exhibit, the first exhibit to your right as you come in. And this bowl was recovered in the Stallings Island area. And what's fascinating about Stallings Island, has anybody been out there kayaking with donkeys? Okay, yes. So Stallings Island is in the middle of the Savannah River, about where Stevens Creek empties into it. Is that right? Where Stevens Creek? Yeah. And they put donkeys on it to protect people and keep them off the island because it's an archaeological site. And so you can paddle up and the donkeys will be there and you can feed them. And it's kind of cool. But the Stallings Island has been explored, gosh, for, I don't know, they've had archaeological digs out there for decades. But Dr. Kenneth Sassaman from the University of, I think it's Central Florida, or maybe it's the University of Florida, he's done an amazing study. And what's fascinating about the Stallings Island culture is that it's one of the first documented cultures that made pottery. And so that's right here, right next door to us. And it's fascinating stories. And then, of course, we also use it as a jumping off point to talk about all the other Native American cultures that were here. Now, we don't know a lot of them that were here because, unfortunately, they didn't have written cultures or written languages, and so we rely on Europeans to tell us who they saw here. The earliest is the Westo that's been documented, and the last tribe that was here were the Chickasaw. And they, unfortunately, were removed after the American Revolution from our area. But one of the things that I love about the Chickasaw is instead of having, a chieftain or a queen, they had a squirrel king. And I'm like, squirrel king? That doesn't sound very frightening. But then you think about it. How determined is that squirrel to get to your bird feeder? And how agile are they in climbing? So they make things happen, and they get what they want. So Squirrel King, awesome title. And then this summer, we have an exhibit coming in that is from the South Carolina State Museum, and we're going to host it here, and it's all about the Native American cultures up to and into the American Revolution, which, of course, is going to be in celebration of next year, 2026, when we have the big 250. So, so check us out. The next artifact I chose is one that leaps us thousands of years forward into 1870 time period. So how many of y'all know when Aiken County was founded? Crickets. Mr. Craver. 1871. Bravo. Huh? Oh, yes. So Aiken County was founded in 1871, and it was cut from 4 pre-existing counties. It was cut from Edgefield, Barnwell, Orangeburg, and Lexington. And we were cut from the North Edisto River down to the Savannah River. So we're squished between 2 rivers. But it's a fascinating story, and we go into it in our county exhibit about how we were founded during Reconstruction. And the people and the time, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot going on. The Freedmen's Bureau is here, the federal troops are here. And all this is going on. And this document really, to me, speaks to so many different levels. And that's what I love about artifacts, is it's not just a piece of paper, or it's not just a satchel like Cynthia's going to talk to you about. There are so many stories that come with that object and teach us so much. So this one was written in 1877, so 6 years after our founding. It is paid out to teacher Alice Mays. She was, bless her heart, only paid $27.10 a month. But maybe that was big for back then. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to do a comparison. And she's being paid to teach in Hamburg at the Gardeners Academy. And Hamburg, of course, predates North Augusta, and there's a whole story about Hamburg. One of my favorite characters of Aiken County history is Henry Schultz. And if you don't know about Henry Schultz, do yourself a favor and Google him. Google Henry Schultz in Hamburg, and you will get all kinds of sordid stories. But it's fascinating because it's made out to this teacher. Here she is, an African-American woman, teaching in a freedman's town. And her pay slip is signed by Prince Rivers, one of the founders of Aiken County. And that's his beautiful looping script right there. And that's Prince River, one of our founders. Another one of our founders is S.B. Spencer. He comes along a little later in Aiken County's development. But these are both African-American men, and they are taking leadership positions in the governing of Aiken County. And what is so fascinating, that this is just 12 years after the Civil War ends. And here are these men making education happen in our area and bringing other things to our area that are so important to its development. So again, just one of my favorite artifacts that we've got. And it's also on display in the county exhibit. The last one I'll leave you with from my side is the atomic bomb license plate with the mushroom clouds as decoration. What? Huh? Yeah, it makes you want to work there, right? But this is on display in our Savannah River site exhibit. And the reason I chose it is because before the Savannah River site came to our area, we were a very rural community. And we were a very agricultural-based community. We were a very merchant-based community. But then in 1950, that all changes. Thousands of people are displaced from their homes of Dunbarton and Ellington and Hawthorne. They lose all their land to eminent domain. And then you have this massive construction project that brings in 30,000 plus people in a time span of 2 years to build this incredible facility that is an outgrowth of the Cold War going on. And everybody around here growing up, there's so much secrecy. That sort of loose lips sink ships. No one talks about working at the bomb plant, even though we all did. But it's one of those things where it brought in construction workers. It brought in scientists. The neutrino was discovered here. It brought in a completely different atmosphere to our area. The size of Aiken triples, the size of North Augusta triples. New schools are built, new shopping centers are built, new homes are built. We had so much growth come from this one moment in time. And as a result, of course, you get the DuPonters, the original guys who worked for DuPont. That was their nickname around here. You get the outgrowth of colleges. I don't know if y'all know this, but we were USC Aiken's first campus here at Banksia from 1961 to 1971. Did anybody come here when it was USC Aiken? Awesome. Did my dad hustle you in ping pong? No? Okay, good. You escaped. My dad tells me stories of coming here, and downstairs was a ping pong table, and he was like, oh yeah, I used to hustle people for lunch money. I'm like, Dad! But we were the first campus of USC Aiken here. And then, of course, later on, you get Savannah River Site Museum, interpreting the history of this major moment in time. And if you haven't been there, it's an amazing museum, open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, and it's free. But I just love this image of the H-bomb with the mushroom clouds. It's just very shocking and so casual the way it was made into a license plate surround. But it's just a fascinating story, I think, that brings so much. Again, it's one small artifact, but it speaks to such a larger story and such a pivotal moment in our county's history. And I'll wrap up, if you don't mind, if I go ahead and go through these real quick. Okay, I think I've got time. So I thought that I would show you some cool artifacts, and these are all alcohol-based artifacts. They're empty. Don't try it. This one right here is a piece of pottery that was made in China. There's the stamp. for Made in China. And it is from the 1850s. I don't know if y'all know, but the Augusta Canal was enlarged in the 1850s and the railroads were expanded. And a lot of Chinese immigrants were brought to our community to do those expansions, mainly in Augusta. And that is why there's such a large Chinese community still today in Augusta, Georgia. But one of the other things that the Chinese immigrants sold was dragon whiskey. Oh, I bet you breathed fire after you drank it. But dragon whiskey was very exotic, very different, and so someone from Aiken County must have gone over to Augusta, bought some dragon whiskey, came back to Hitchcock Woods, had a great time, and then chunked it in the woods, because that's where it was found. So this came from Hitchcock Woods. This is a misstruck bottle from the dispensary. Now, the dispensary system was a way to control alcohol distribution from about 1908 to 1915 in South Carolina. And North Augusta was lucky enough to have one of the dispensaries for the state. And they sold alcohol there to anybody who could come to North Augusta, including, just so happens, all those folks in Augusta, Georgia who went dry the year before, according to their legislation. So 1907, Augusta goes dry. 1908, North Augusta opens up a shop for you. And in fact, there was so much back and forth in the Augusta City Council that at one point, a councilman said, we should just blow up that bridge at 13th Street to prevent our citizens from going to North Augusta and buying alcohol. And I'm like, that's a bit drastic. Don't think I'd do that. This is a South Carolina commemoration alcohol bottle or bourbon that commemorated the 1670 to 1970 tricentennial, and that is that tricentennial that founded our museum around 1970. And then just to show you that we collect everything from 1850 to modern. If y'all remember the Aiken Brewing Company down on Lawrence Street, very popular, we've got one of their mugs because they went out of business last year and we wanted to commemorate their history. So we got up one of their mugs. So we collect everything from thousands of years old to just yesterday. That's all the history of Aiken County. And with that, I will pass it on to Ambria.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Good. Again, I'm Ambria Abney, and I'm the supervisor for the Center for African American History, Art, and Culture. Can you all hear me? Having a little bit of trouble? Can you hear me now? Better? All right. All right, so again, just if you didn't hear me, I'm Ambria Abney. I'm the supervisor over at the Center for African American History, Art, and Culture. We are located on 120 York Street, Aiken, South Carolina. There we go. All right, so I think on this panel we may be the youngest museum. So we are 5,550 square feet. So we're located again on 120 York Street Northeast on the corner of York and Richland. So before we were the center, we were the Emmanuel Institute. The Emmanuel Institute was founded by Presbyterian missionary W.R. Cole. He came to Aiken in 1881 with two missions: to start a church and to start a school. Well, he did both. He did both on Newberry Street in a 6-bedroom house. Oh. All right, so as he did both on Newberry Street, he outgrew it. He outgrew the room, well, he outgrew the house, so they were able to get the property on York Street with the help of former slaves Vincent Green and his mother. So they helped found the property that we're on now. So with this magnificent building that we have, at first it was the Emmanuel Institute, then that shut down, then it was the Jackson School. So after that, we became a number of things. We were the Salvation Army, we were another school, we were a movie theater. But in 2004, some community members got together and said we need to save that building. So they worked on it, and now we're here. They opened it up in 2022. It was, it was a vacant building. So if you actually go to our building, you can see In the ceilings and on the floors, you can see what's new and what's old. So in the front, it has that old feel, but towards the back, it has the newer restorations, newer renovations towards the back. In our center, we have 4 exhibit spaces. So we have the main gallery, which we change out every 3 to 4 months. So right now, we actually have a new exhibit called the Black Pearl right now. It actually isn't open yet, so I gave y'all a sneak peek. So we have Education Station, the Africa Room, and the America Room. Now, the America Room and also our upstairs room, which is the great room, but it's not an exhibit space, can be rented. So if you have a birthday party, a meeting, come over and rent with us, okay? Now, we only have one outdoor structure, and it's called Founders Park. Now, if you've ever been to Juneteenth or Juneteenth celebrations, that's where it is, Founders Park. Our programming efforts include exhibit openings, lectures, and school field trips. I actually did my first field trip last Tuesday with Bettis Prep, and it was so much fun. We had Chick-fil-A. We watched Spider-Man. It was really, really nice. They had blazers. It was really cool. They were 8th graders. So they were big kids, but they still had that spark in their eyes for learning. Like learning is not blah yet, just yet. But it was really cool. And then for our special events, we have Juneteenth, and as of late last year, we had Festival of Trees. And I've been begging our PRT director to let me have it again for this year. So hopefully we'll have Festival of Trees this January, and well, December and January. Festival of Trees. Festival of Trees is basically an event where community organizations get together and they donate a tree. There's a competition. So whoever who has the prettiest tree, you get $25, 15, 10 to go towards your organization. It's the same one. It's the same one. We just got it for the first time last year. hmm So some of our cool artifacts. So through the Africa Room, you can find the door of no return. Now this leads into our slave ship, right? So of course, growing up in school, we learned a lot about slavery. But I've never been in any building that had anything like this before. So it is a slave ship that you go into. Now it has lights in it, and our historian Wayne O'Brien he makes it very, very creepy. He's like, once you go on the slave ship, there's no return. And which is not. There's no return. You can't go back home. So I don't want. Let me off. No, you're on there for good. So when he talks about the slave ship, he always tells us that if you're standing here, and if you are of any African descent, then that means that your family they made it. They survived. Now, understanding that when I was in school, I didn't learn certain things. So I know the person next to me didn't learn it either. So that slave ship is not just for people of African descent, it's for all of us. All of us to go and learn about history that maybe we missed. All right, we have Sankofa symbols in our museum. They're African symbols. And one of the symbols is about it's never too late to turn around and look back to what you missed. All right, so those who survived this ride, they're here. My family, they're here. Also, Prince Rivers, one of the founders of Aiken County, he was a slave in Beaufort. He was born into slavery. All right, he was born into slavery in Beaufort, and when his slave master meant to move his slaves to Edgefield, he booked ship. He left. He escaped. He escaped, and then he became a soldier in the first South Carolina Volunteers, and that's how he became who he is now. Well, who he was then. All right. Our second artifact is a quilt. Now, Mr. Wayne told me I could have brought the quilt, but I didn't want the responsibility. Okay? Because, well, preface by saying that Wayne O'Brien is our historian. He's our volunteer, actually. He gets no kind of funds for this. But our center will not be half of what it is without him. So anytime he wants to do anything, I'm always on board with it. Now, these quotes are from his mother, Miss Marlene O'Brien Seabrook. She passed away in 2017, but before she passed, she gave all of her things to her 3 sons. And I think it's so cool that they they truly care about their mother's work, and they put it up in museums like ours. And he does it in such a way that it makes you feel that even though she's not my mother, I know that she was important. So she was a professor. She was actually the first black female instructor at the military college, the Citadel. She was a community steward and craft extraordinaire. Now, she had a lot of jobs, y'all. She worked. She had 3 kids. She was a wife. She was an AKA. She did a lot of stuff, but she still had time to do stuff like this, which is amazing to me. And she went to school part time as well. Now this piece of art is called "Alone in the Garden," and it is a slave girl out in the garden. She has it's supposed to be rice crop in that bag. You can also see like the sweet grass baskets on the quilt as well. Now she's alone in the garden and she's talking to God. We don't know what she's talking to God about. He didn't tell me that part. But it's a really cool quilt to say that even though your body might be in bondage, your mind is not. So this piece was actually from my exhibit, Africa Root and Gullah Fruit, which highlights the Gullah Geechee culture along the coast. So if you don't know what Gullah Geechee culture is, that is about the West African and Lower Atlantic connection during slavery. So the slaves that came from West Africa, they came to the Lower Atlantic, and there they made a cultural connection. So they also have their own language, Geechee. So if you go to Charleston and you hear people with like a sort of a twang in their voices, that's Geechee language, okay? Now, Gullah Geechee culture is not just in Charleston. It's in Florida, it's in North Carolina, and it's even in Virginia, okay? Now, for our last artifact, I couldn't bring the wall with me, so I pestered Miss Wayne to do me a small little video on it. Can I play it? So this wall is for our African American activists in Aiken County. Now, if you cannot hear my little video, please come visit us so you can actually see this in person. All right, it's in the back of our museum. And again, we are located on 120 York Street, Northeast. We're open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 3, all right? Thank y'all so much and come see us.
Yeah, sorry about the audio on that video, guys. I forgot that projector is terrible with its audio.
Again, I'm Cynthia Hardy. I take care of the Wagoner Museum. Official title, I'm a director. I think of myself more of a professional volunteer. Just about everything I do is volunteer work. If you're not familiar where Wagoner's located, I mean, we're in the news all the time. You might as well know where we're at, but I love Wagoner. Don't get me wrong. I love Wagoner. I made the conscious decision to live there for the past 40 years after having the opportunity to live anywhere in the United States. But Wagoner is located near the Orangeburg and Lexington County line. So we're very close. We're in the far lands of Aiken County. Aiken's a big county, but it's worth the visit. We were founded in a jail, as all good museums are found. Oops, sorry. You touched something. See? Sabotage. Probably because of the video. It's your fault. There you go. There we go. See, I wanted you to see that pretty picture. There you go. I was going to give you a couple more minutes. We are a small museum. Small town's going to have a small museum, but we are packed with all kind of information and artifacts. It's well worth the visit. We're in the former Harriet Kitchens Library at this time. This building was originally this building originally was in the Kitchens Mill area, which is a small community out towards Wagoner. It's okay. It's all right. They got to see my pretty picture. You know, most of the times I don't do this. I bring a little whiteboard with pictures and poster paper. But Lauren told me I had to do this, so she made me do a PowerPoint, okay? But we are a small museum. Once again, we're in the Harriet Kitchens Library. It was built in 1908, but not in this location. It was in the Kitchens Mill community. And if you're familiar with Wagoner, when you go on 302, you go through the Kitchens Mill. You kind of cut off in it. But we moved the building to Wagoner because it was going to be destroyed. And we are a sucker for old buildings in Wagoner. So that's our first home, though, was in the Wagoner jail, where a lot of good museums start out. Yep. It was the jail first in Wagoner. Basically, it was just a drying out place. I mean, we really didn't have a whole lot of bad stuff during the time the jail was there, but it became the jail first, and then it was our library. Not at the same time. We were not hard up for buildings, so we were not going to do that. But after the library, the library got its own building. It became the museum in Wagoner. The other building that we have is the South Carolina Bicentennial Wagon House. I'll talk more about that later. That's a special thing on its own. But the Harriet Kitchens Library, it was located in Kitchens Mill. It's kind of considered one of the first public libraries in Aiken County. It was a community-led building. They got themselves together, had fundraisers, nickel and dimed it, built the building, furnished it. It had a library in it, and then like a reading or like a community center off to it, which I think that's like one of our largest artifacts. I'm not fancy on the web pages, but I'm on the Facebook page. So if you are interested in visiting us, go to Facebook, look up the Wagoner Museum. I always tell people Wagoner has an extra E in it, even though we don't pronounce it. There is an extra E in Wagoner. So if you're looking us up, make sure you spell us right. I wanted to bring this bag with me. It's one of my favorite items in the whole museum. This was Josephine Matthews' medical bag. Ma Jo, or Miss Jo as we knew her, she was not a doctor. She was a midwife. You could say she was born to be a midwife because her mother was a midwife, her grandmother was a midwife, and I think even maybe her great-grandmother was a midwife. So she had it in her blood. Now, she didn't start out that way. When she was about 20, she got married, was a farming family. She and her husband farmed. He got sick. She couldn't farm by herself, so she had to have a way to make money. So she went back to being a midwife with her mother, basically learned from her mother. Her first delivery was in 1939. The last delivery was in 1979, and that was triplets. She went past her retirement age. 1,300 babies at least from this lady, catching babies, as she would put it. She was the first midwife in our area to have accreditation because, in the early years, it was just the thing that was passed down usually from mother to daughter. And she came on at a good time because a lot of the midwives in the area were 65 years and older. And it was good to have young blood come in to the midwifery, as one of them called. There you go. I even looked that up. She was 74 years old when she got her high school diploma. She had to leave school in the 5th grade. the time her family needed the help. Probably had more than one kid, and they needed to go out. There was a local school teacher that had TB that needed 24-hour care. So Ma Jo, or Josephine Matthews, she left school in the 5th grade. But she thought it was important enough to get that education, so she went back to night school in her 70s and got her GED. Now, I'm going to leave you with a favorite story on her, and Lauren's heard this probably several times. She did everything. She did like early version of like Meals on Wheels, delivering to the old people, which, you know, I don't know what her age, what old to her was, because she was up in age when she was doing all this. But she was out and about when she was a midwife, and the community that she was in, she thought she would check on a family, a mother and child, that she had delivered the child about a year earlier. Well, in the yard, the woman had stair-step kids, you know, one right after another. And so there's this little 5-year-old that's in the yard with his younger siblings, and the little 1-year out there, year-old, and just watching them and everything. And he sees Ma Jo coming up with this medical bag. And he kind of looks at her, kind of funny, and he says, "Ma Jo, we'll keep this one, but don't you be bringing no more babies. You know, we'll keep this one, but don't be bringing no more babies in that bag." The parents were telling the kids that that's where babies come from. They come from Ma Jo's medical bag. Ma Jo said that when she looked at that child's face, she knew he was deadly serious. There was no, you know, he was not joking. But I always thought that was a cute story about her and her little bag. Sebring, South Carolina. It's one of those towns you really don't hear about anymore. It started out, it was going to be quite the town. I have a plat that's from the late 1890s that they had drawn out all these wonderful places that all these stores were going to be at. This is a picture of the train 141 at Sebring at 4:20 p.m. on June the 29th, 1928. Wouldn't you love if you had all these old pictures that had all this information on them? You know, I begged for information like that on these older pictures. It was part of the Sebring and Knoxville Railroad, was built in 1887. The Sebring part they did really good on, okay? This is where the depot is. The Knoxville Railroad, not so much. It made it about 17 miles down the road to Batesburg. So Knoxville was pretty ambitious at the time. You know, it sounded good, but we had the railroad come through there. There was kaolin mining. I brought me a hunk of it. I always bring my kaolin wherever I go. Kaolin mining and Edisto Academy. If you're like me, I'm a sucker for old histories of churches and schools and things like that. That was on my bucket list. Edisto Academy. I had to go out there eventually. Edisto Academy was a Christian boarding school, and it's located in Sebring. Sebring basically consists of the community, but the Sebring Baptist Church is still there. Wonderful church. Right across the road, Edisto Academy. If you're ever out that way and you see this big concrete E, they brought it from the back where the buildings used to be. That's where the entrance to where Edisto Academy. I did a video several years ago, and it's on the Aiken Barnwell Genealogical Society's YouTube channel. If you ever want to peek at what's behind the woods, I got permission from the landowner to go out there. There used to be buildings out there, but we had a arson, so there's just remnants of buildings at this day. A wonderful connection between us, between the railroad, the name of Sebring, the kaolin, and Wagoner is everything's connected to the Wagoner family. Wagoner's not a name really in our area. Now, if I said Gunnersville, slews of gunners out there. You're looking at somebody that probably has like 3 or 4 lines of gunners. Do not judge me. They did not go very far for husbands and wives back then, okay? Okay, I promise you, okay? But Wagoner was a Charleston family, and I think there's still a Wagoner building out that way. But the owners of the railroad, the family that owned the railroad, they were Wagners. The kaolin mining, the Wagoner family had an interest in it. The president of the railroad was George Wagoner. What else we got? The kaolin mining, the railroad, the name Severn. That was named after one of their hometowns back in Germany. Wagner, Severn, hometown back in Germany. So that's the connections between all of it. I can't draw a line in the sand and say, okay, the Wagner Museum is just going to be Wagner. Lauren's trying to take care of the whole county. I'm trying to take care of my little corner. Right there. Oh, all kind of things. You could do a whole program on kaolin. I might have to find somebody to do it. I've read that they use it for makeup, to make smooth. Kaopectate, Ko and kaopectate used to be kaolin. Very, very. Paper to tires, paper to make it smooth, bunches of things. That would be a wonderful program, just somebody to do on kaolin. Yes. Yep. The kaolin mining that was out at Severn, I had how many greats it was? At least two great aunts. They had the kaolin mining out at Severn, and she said over time the quality of it wasn't as good, some kind of slump test or something that they did. And if something's not going to make money, they're not going to put money into it. And then that was one of the reasons the railroad was coming out that way too. The Wagoner family had their hands in the railroad. They also had their hands in the kaolin mine, and that's partly that little piece of paper I brought up here. You'll see the Wagoner family name on it. All right, my third one, and Lauren wouldn't let me bring this. She just put her foot down on me. South Carolina Bicentennial Wagon. It's only for the base of it's about 15 feet, and then another 9 feet for the tongue, about 6 feet across, and about 10 feet high. I mean, I don't know why she wouldn't think that I couldn't just bring it over here. We're gonna have to work on this. But this is really special. This was represented the state of South Carolina in 1976 for the Bicentennial Wagon pilgrimage to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania bought a wagon for each one of the states. I'm talking about every one of them, including Alaska and Hawaii. And what they were going to do is a reenactment. You know how we learned in school about going from east to west on the old wagon train trails and, discovering it all. They reenacted that, but they went from west to east. So in 1975, because you had to get started early if you're going to make it back all the way to this side of the country in 1976, because the idea was they were going to converge on Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, July the 4th, 1976, each one of these wagon trains. We had it easy. We're already on the East Coast, so we were in the original 13 colonies part. But the ones that were out, like in Washington State, they had to start in 1975. And I'm not telling you that they did not put these wagons on the bed of a trailer and just bring them this way. They actually rode along. There's rubber on the tires so they could take them on the road. Our wagon in Wagoner has rubber on the tires, and they fitted it for this. The wagons were built in Arkansas. Fun fact about that, the original canvases were made right over here in Graniteville. All the canvases for all those 50 wagons were made in Graniteville. So they're making their way across the country. They're not staying in the Motel 6s and the Holiday Inns. They are staying with these wagons, and each one of these wagon trains have their own chuck wagon. They have outriders. If they happen to come through your area and you wanted to join up and you had a horse and a wagon, you could join them for a couple of weeks. Can you imagine being a kid and your parents come home and say, oh, we're going to take you out of school for a couple of weeks. We're going to go on the wagon train. And they actually did. I've had people contact me that happened, that they rode along with the wagon train. Now, you're probably asking yourself, I'm from a small town, probably about 800 people on a good day. How did a town as small as Wagoner get ownership of, or guardianship is the way I put it, of a wagon that represents the entire state of South Carolina? Well, after all this celebration was done up at Valley Forge, they sent the wagons back to each state. So the wagon came back to Columbia. And, you know how small town people, ask, we went up there and asked for it. A group of our citizens, they thought, hey, all they can do is say no. So they went to, after the wagons were coming back, and they said, what you going to do with that wagon? Now, they didn't say it like that. They said it probably in a nice way, and no, it had facts to back it up. But we had something really going for us at that time. We had Wagons to Wagoner, and that was a festival. You know how you have the Springfield Frog Jump, you had the Chitlin Strut and Sally, Pillion Peanut Party. We had Wagons to Wagoner, and I guess the wagon part really sold it. So they said we could have it to take care of it, and we've had it ever since, and we've protected it ever since. A lot of states, they don't know what happened to their wagon, or if they've been out in the elements. I read where one of them, it was behind a chain link fence for several years, just outside. Now, some of them, they are safely in museums. Some have no idea, because I think some of them, when they made it back to their capitals, they just went back out on farms, and no one really kept track of them. But we had, in the beginning, we had a very small wagon house that was wonderfully done by our construction students from the Wagoner Sally High School. But in 2012, with part of that tax accommodation money, we got us a new wagon house, and it is a very nice wagon house. It's where if you happen to come to Wagoner, you're just out our way for some reason, and you don't have an opportunity to see the museum, you can still see the wagon because it has windows. So you can pull off the side of the road and actually see the wagon. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of history about the Wagoner Museum and the Bicentennial Wagon House. If you do have an opportunity, I've got some little pamphlets up here that have my phone number, the town hall's number on it. Give me a call. We'll set up an appointment for you to come and see us. I live right in town. It's no trouble. No, luckily, I don't live very far, and professional volunteer. If I'm not out and around, over here doing commissioning stuff and doing things like that, I'm pretty open. If you give me some heads up, and I always tell people this, I get more out-of-town people than I do actually people that live near me, which I've always thought. I had people from Colorado, 2 different groups in 1 week. So, I'm very open. I believe in sharing our history, because like I said, I have no education in this. This has just been a pure out love of genealogy and history, and I get to meet the most wonderful people. You know yourself, you can't run this without the volunteers. We're also on the Passport program, so if you come out to see us, you'll see us, and then right down the road is State Park, which is another stamp on your passport. So you can, and then we have the petting zoo out that way. There's lots of things even though we're a one-light town, stoplight town, there's a lot of things in the area that you can. Ice cream shop. There you go. See, our bake shop, y'all lost your little bake shop. We have one in Wagoner. Just don't come on Monday. But yeah, just call me or call the town hall if you can't get a hold of me. Everybody knows where to find me. I had a person one time couldn't get a hold of me with the genealogy group. And you know how small towns are. They called the library looking for me. So just feel free. It's no bother. And leave me a message or either message me on Facebook. But thank you so much for your attention.
Do y'all have any questions for us about our museums or our town history or anything else? Yes, ma'am. Sure. I actually did a talk last summer about town roads, the names from the town roads. It's a little bit complicated. Y'all know Whiskey Road here, one of our main thoroughfares. I actually went all the way back to colonial plats, and the earliest mention I could find of Whiskey Road was about 1820s. So it predates the town of Aiken. And from what I can find, and it's kind of unusual, and I'm making a guess at this, but back at the time, the Barnwell district, we were part of Barnwell up until about mid-Aiken. That's when you get into Edgefield district. So the Barnwell Road Commission was also the Barnwell Liquor Commission. And so I have a feeling that that might have had some feed into that, being called whiskey. There's also local legends. One legend is that it was a colonial road, and that the men traveling the colonial roads would dump their whiskey bottles here. And they were all in the ditches coming into town, or coming into the area, because there was no Aiken yet. And then the other thing I've heard is that I found a newspaper article in the 1870s talking about Whiskey Road, and they suggested the name was because that all of these wonderful artesian wells and fountains we have here had the best water to make whiskey from. And so there were a lot of moonshiners in the back down there selling good whiskey with that spring water. So 3 different types of stories that could feed into the Whiskey Road name. But you're welcome. Any other questions? Oh, I know. I know, that's kind of cool. If y'all look at Fresh Market near Aiken, just off to the side, are mimosa, brandy, gin, and I can't remember, there was sherry. Yeah. I actually don't know the history behind that, although one of my volunteers does, because she was going to tell me, and I forgot to ask her. But yeah, they were all, evidently at one point there was a development under the Barnards, I think, had the land there, and it was literally called Barnard 1, Barnard 2, Barnard 3. Yeah, the roads were, and then they renamed them all alcoholic beverages. And I'm like, it's a marketing ploy. They know Fresh Market's right there with Harvard Liquors and Spirits, and they want to get us in the mood before we get there. But I'm not quite sure about that one, why they went from Barnard 1, 2, and 3 to the alcoholic beverages. But I do love it. Any other questions? Now, Miss Cynthia, you did not tell my favorite story. The red store, you got to tell it.
Well, you know how I was talking about? Make me use it. We were talking about how we used the jail for the library and then the museum. Well, I have a receipt here, and it says Red Motor Company at the top. Okay? But when you get to look, you're expecting that it's going to be like it for an oil change or maybe buying something like that. But if you get to reading it, you start seeing things like casket, vault, embalming, and funeral services. $260. Well, the reason it's on a Red Motor Company, and this is the thing I always tell people, that if they're doing any genealogy out our area, don't be surprised at what you see as an undertaker. Because in the early years, if you're out in the Wagoner area and somebody passed away and you pull a death certificate under undertaker, you might see Red Motor Company. It was because the families were intermarried, the Baltmans and the Reds and all. And I guess they were just saving a little bit of money by using the same receipts. But that would always catches people's eyes when they come through the museum. I have this hanging up near the back door. They're thinking that they're just going to see something very simple like an oil change. And like Lauren says, you can have your oil changed and have grandma fixed up while you're in the same building, because it was located in the same building. If you're ever through Wagoner, where the Hoover, the flooring is, downstairs, that was the cars, and upstairs was the embalming. And just for the fun fact, I also have the embalming equipment in the museum. I collect everything. This saves me. My house is a lot cleaner because I run a museum. But the other thing I have, just real quick, since we're looking at show and tell, and she wouldn't let me bring the wagon. These are pictures of actually during 1976. I usually think of 76 as just red, white, and blue. If you were here during that time, everything seemed like they had an emblem for the bicentennial, or red, white, and blue were the colors. Couldn't get away from it. This is actual pictures that were during the 76, the pilgrimage. And the mules that pulled the wagon were Francis and Marion. That was their name. The first picture is, I'm not sure the location, but this is just some of the wagons gathered up, probably getting ready to go. And then on the bottom, another thing they were doing when they were going around with the wagons, they would stop in all these small towns. And they stopped in wagon before the pilgrimage. And they, in fact, had people drop out of the sky. In our high school, they had, what would you call it? Almost like a medicine show type thing. where they are performances, because they had a performance group that came along with the wagon train, and they would stop in the small towns. If you're interested, I think they have a recording of it on YouTube, and then I also have a recording of it on a DVD at the museum. Had wonderful people reach out to me when I put some questions. Facebook has got good and bad to it, but I've done some really good stuff with it online, because there's a Facebook page where people that were associated with the wagon train, they get together and they talk, and I'm like just in the background lurking, catching all, and they know I'm there, so I'm not, they know who I am, but all kind of interesting stories. And that was one of them. They had a DVD made of their little show, and I have it at the museum, and they may even have it on YouTube by now. But that's a little bit about our wagon. Any more stories you want me to tell?
Thank you. Well, with that, thank you all so much for coming out today and hearing about our wonderful museums. Remember to visit us, Aiken County Historical Museum. You're already here, so thank you. Center for African American History, Art, and Culture, just up there on York Street. The Wagoner Museum, out in the middle of nowhere. Middle of nowhere, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Another one of my favorite things, last thing I'll leave you with, is when I was researching the history of Aiken County, I had grown up in North Augusta, but I really didn't know much more outside of North Augusta history. And so I'm researching especially the more rural areas where my knowledge was really lacking. And I came across Wagoner, and the fact that Wagoner was once known as Pendertown. And I was like, Pendertown? Anybody know? You can't guess, Tom. You already know it. Anybody know what penders are? Peanuts. They were so well known for their quality of peanuts that they grew in the ground that they were nicknamed Pendertown, for Peanut Town. And so I'm just like, man, I'm going for some boiled peanuts now. That's my favorite thing. Oh yeah, there's a picture of some Peanut Town, yep. Well, we hope you will take your passport and that you will visit all of our wonderful sites, and especially the museums who couldn't be here today with us. And as always, the lecture series in the summer, the hot series, check back on the website, ACH and Friends, in about a week, and the tickets should be up there for purchase. You can either buy one lecture if you want to come see me talk about shady people of the winter colony, or if you want to buy the whole series, there's a discount. But you'll have a wonderful dinner, a wonderful night of fun history, and again, you're supporting a great cause, although I'm totally biased. But thank y'all once again.